I always thought home was supposed to be a place of peace, a sanctuary where you could relax, enjoy your space, and maybe, just maybe, live without constant interference. Then Karen moved in. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was a self-appointed dictator of the HOA, armed with a clipboard, an iron will, and an unnatural obsession with lawn decor, mailbox alignment, and apparently, how I lived my life. At first, it was just petty complaints, too many leaves in my driveway, an offensively placed garden gnome, the audacity of my trash cans being visible for more than 30 seconds after pickup. But then she did the unthinkable. She invited her friends onto my private property and threw a full-blown pool party in my backyard. That was the moment I knew Karen had to go. And I was going to be the one to take her down. It was a quiet, sunny afternoon in my peaceful suburban neighborhood. Birds chirped, kids rode their bikes along the sidewalk, and the scent of freshly cut grass lingered in the air. My house, a cozy little spot with a well-maintained lawn and a backyard pool, had always been my sanctuary. The kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happened, until she arrived. Enter Karen. You know the type. Perfectly coiffed hair that never moved, oversized sunglasses that screamed I'm better than you, and of course the infamous clipboard. Because what's a self-appointed neighborhood ruler without one? Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was the self-proclaimed sheriff of the HOA, a one-woman committee determined to uphold her version of law and order. Never mind that she held no official position. She had opinions, and in her mind, that was enough to wield power. She made her grand entrance into our lives within days of moving in. The first offense? A decorative garden gnome. Yes, a gnome. One morning, I stepped outside to find Karen standing at the edge of my property, arms crossed, staring at my front yard as if it had personally insulted her. You're violating HOA guidelines, she declared, pointing at the innocent ceramic creature standing guard by my mailbox. I blinked. Excuse me? The gnome, she hissed, as if the word itself was offensive. HOA rules prohibit tacky lawn decor. I stared at her, then at the gnome, who, for the record, looked quite distinguished in his little red hat. That's not in the HOA handbook. Karen scoffed. Well, it should be. That was the moment I realized my peaceful days were numbered. Within a week, Karen had worked her way through the neighborhood, handing out violation notices like they were coupons at a grocery store. Grass too long? Violation. Holiday wreath up 2 days past the acceptable time frame? Violation. Trash cans placed too far from the curb? Another violation. She was relentless. One evening, I caught her measuring my mailbox, standing there with a tape measure, scrutinizing the exact dimensions as if it were a crime scene. I swear, she glared at it like it had personally offended her ancestors. The worst part, she actually enjoyed this. Karen wasn't just enforcing the rules. She was making them up as she went along. And nothing, not logic, not reason, not even the actual HOA bylaws could stop her. I tried to ignore her antics at first, assuming she'd eventually get bored and move on to harassing someone else. I was wrong, because Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor with a clipboard. Karen was a force of nature. And she was about to take things to a whole new level of crazy. Karen's reign of terror didn't stop with gnome inspections and mailbox measurements. If anything, those were just the warm-up acts. She was just getting started. It quickly became clear that Karen had one goal: absolute power over the neighborhood. And she was willing to create rules out of thin air to achieve it. One day, I found a notice taped to my front door. In bold, capital letters, it read, Violation, unsanctioned bird feeder. I frowned. Unsanctioned? Was I running a rogue wildlife cafe? Since when did feeding birds require a permit? I marched outside, only to find Karen standing at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, the clipboard of doom clutched in her perfectly manicured hands. Karen, I started, already exhausted. Why am I getting a violation for feeding birds? She sighed dramatically, like a teacher dealing with an especially dim student. HOA regulations prohibit attracting wildlife. I pointed at the sky. Karen, they're birds. They already live here. She narrowed her eyes. And now they're congregating. It's disruptive. For a brief moment, I considered arguing that this was literally what birds do. But I knew better. Karen was immune to logic. The nonsense didn't stop there. She began patrolling the neighborhood like a self-appointed security guard, issuing warnings for absurd infractions. A single leaf on a driveway? Violation. A garden hose not coiled to perfection? Violation. A welcome mat that was too expressive? Immediate warning. Her need for control had no limits. One evening, I caught her staring at my car, lips pursed, hands on hips. "Something wrong, Karen?" I asked. She huffed. "Your vehicle is parked incorrectly." I looked at my car, which was neatly in my driveway, not blocking anything or anyone. "Karen, it's in my own driveway." "Yes," she said, eyes narrowing, "but it's not aligned properly." At that moment, I realized Karen wasn't just making up rules. She was actively searching for ways to be offended. And if she couldn't find an existing HOA rule to justify her complaints, she simply invented one. The neighborhood, once a place of peace, had become a battleground. And Karen, she was thriving. I tried to be reasonable. Really, I did. At first, I attempted the diplomatic approach, thinking that maybe, just maybe, Karen could be reasoned with. "Karen," I said one afternoon as she stood scrutinizing my mailbox for the third time that week, "I checked the HOA handbook, and there's nothing in there about mailbox size." She gasped, hand flying to her chest like I'd just confessed to a felony. "That doesn't mean it's not a problem." I sighed. "You can't just enforce rules that don't exist." Karen straightened her clipboard like she was adjusting a royal scepter. "The integrity of the neighborhood is at stake. If we let one person ignore standards, what's next? Neon-colored doors? Unregulated lawn ornaments? Absolute chaos." I could only stare at her. The absurdity was getting out of hand, and I wasn't the only one who thought so. My neighbor Tom whispered to me over the fence. She wrote me up because my garden hose wasn't aesthetically pleasing. I didn't even know that was a thing. Nancy from 2 doors down nodded in agreement. She tried to find me for leaving my porch light on past 10 p.m. Clearly, I wasn't alone in this battle. But no matter how ridiculous Karen's antics became, she refused to back down. The more I tried to push back with logic and common sense, the more she doubled down on her own version of reality. One day, after she delivered her latest complaint, something about my driveway being too dark at night, I decided I'd had enough. If Karen wanted to play this game, fine. I'd play too. Only I'd play it better. Word spread quickly. Karen had gone from a mere annoyance to a full-fledged neighborhood menace. At first, some residents supported her, mostly those who enjoyed unnecessary rules and pointless power struggles. The rule followers, as we called them. They nodded in approval whenever Karen issued another ridiculous citation, acting as if she were some noble defender of suburban purity. Then there were the secret rebels, neighbors who had suffered under her reign but weren't quite brave enough to challenge her head-on. They whispered their grievances behind closed doors, swapping Karen horror stories like war veterans. Tom, my next-door neighbor, smirked as he recounted his latest run-in. "She accused my cat of trespassing." I blinked. "Your cat?" "Yeah. Apparently, she thinks he's violating property boundaries." "Did you explain that cats don't recognize property lines?" I tried. She handed me a warning notice anyway. Even the HOA meetings had turned into a full-blown soap opera. Karen would storm in, binder in hand, flipping through pages as if she were presenting criminal evidence instead of petty complaints. "We need to talk about mailbox consistency," she announced at one meeting, slamming her papers onto the table. The HOA president sighed. "Karen, we've discussed this. Mailboxes are fine." Karen's eye twitched. But they could be better. Every meeting followed the same pattern. Karen insisted on discussing trivial infractions. Everyone groaned, and nothing got resolved. But behind the scenes, the neighborhood was starting to shift. People were getting tired of Karen's nonsense. The secret rebels were becoming bolder. One night, a few of us gathered in Tom's backyard to exchange strategies. "We need a plan," Nancy whispered. "She's out of control." I grinned. "Oh, don't worry. I've got something in mind." Because while Karen was busy making life miserable for everyone else, she had failed to realize something important. We were done playing by her rules. The breaking point came when Karen crossed the ultimate line, trespassing on private property. One Saturday afternoon, I arrived home to the unmistakable sounds of splashing, laughter, and blaring pop music. Confused, I stepped into my backyard and stopped dead in my tracks. My pool, my private pool, was full of people. Karen, dressed in an oversized sun hat and a questionable leopard print swimsuit, lounged on one of my pool chairs, sipping a drink like she owned the place. Her friends, a group of equally entitled women, floated around on inflatable rafts in my pool as if they had been personally invited. I was so stunned, I actually checked to make sure I hadn't somehow wandered into someone else's backyard by mistake. Nope. This was my house. My backyard. And these people were trespassing. What the hell is going on? I finally managed to say. Karen barely looked up from her drink. Oh, you're home. Good. We were just about to send for more ice. I blinked. Send for more? Karen, what are you doing in my backyard? She sighed as if I was the unreasonable one. The HOA has been discussing shared amenities, and since your pool is the only one on the block, we thought it would be neighborly for you to let the community enjoy it. I stared at her, trying to process the sheer audacity. You decided my private pool is now a community amenity? Without asking me? And just what? Threw yourselves a party. Karen gave an infuriatingly dismissive wave. Oh, don't be so dramatic. We are part of the same neighborhood, you know. Oh, hell no. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and snapped a few pictures of the scene, including Karen mid-sip, looking like the world's most entitled trespasser. Then I dialed the non-emergency police number. Yeah, I'd like to report multiple people trespassing on my private property, I said, making sure my voice carried loud enough for Karen to hear. That got her attention. She bolted upright, spilling half her drink. Wait, what? You heard me, I said, crossing my arms. You and your guests have approximately 5 minutes to vacate before I let the authorities handle it. The mood in the pool immediately shifted. Karen's friends suddenly looked very interested in leaving. One by one, they climbed out of the water, grabbed their towels, and vanished faster than Karen could finish protesting. But we're neighbors, she sputtered. I stared at her. And you're trespassing. Karen, realizing she had officially lost control of the situation, grabbed her towel and stormed out, dripping wet and muttering about how rude I was. The cops arrived just in time to see the last of the partygoers scurrying away. I explained the situation, showed them the photos, and, just for good measure, pulled up the HOA bylaws, which made zero mention of private property being communal space. That was strike one. Strike two came a few days later when I presented everything at the next HOA meeting. I stood up in front of the entire neighborhood and laid out the facts. Karen had been issuing fake violations, harassing homeowners, and now she had trespassed onto private property. The HOA board was not pleased. The room went dead silent as I played a short video clip from my security camera. Karen, stepping through my gate, cool as you please, as if she had every right to be there. That was the moment Karen knew she was screwed. Strike three came when the board finally made their decision. Karen was fined for trespassing. Karen was removed from any unofficial role of power. And Karen was officially banned from filing any more complaints on behalf of the HOA. Her face turned an impressive shade of red as the ruling was announced. I half expected steam to start coming out of her ears. For the first time since she'd moved in, Karen had no power. And the neighborhood? It erupted into quiet celebration. Karen's downfall wasn't just satisfying, it was spectacular. The moment the HOA delivered its verdict, she sat there speechless. For someone who always had an opinion and a violation notice, ready to go, watching her struggle to process her own punishment was almost beautiful. The HOA rules apply to everyone, including you, Karen, the board president said, barely masking his exhaustion. Trespassing is a serious violation and the fine stands. Karen sputtered. But I was just community engagement. The board president raised an eyebrow. Breaking into someone's backyard and using their private property without permission is not community engagement. Karen wasn't used to being on the receiving end of consequences. She flipped through her binder, desperate to find some loophole, some obscure bylaw she could twist in her favor. But this time, nothing could save her. The meeting wrapped up, and as people left, a few neighbors gave me subtle nods of approval. Tom clapped me on the back. That was glorious. Nancy smirked. Did you see her face when they handed her the fine? Priceless. But Karen? She was furious. For the next few weeks, she sulked. Gone were the daily violation notices taped to doors. Gone were the self-righteous speeches about preserving the integrity of the neighborhood. Instead, Karen stomped around, fuming in silence, her clipboard nowhere in sight. And then karma delivered one final, perfect blow. One evening, I walked outside and noticed something strange. Karen's house had holiday decorations. Not just any decorations, but an elaborate, oversized, completely unapproved display of flashing lights, animatronic reindeer, and a giant inflatable Santa waving from the roof. I grinned, because if there was one thing I knew for sure, that display was a violation of the very same HOA rules she'd spent months weaponizing against everyone else. With a satisfied chuckle, I did exactly what Karen had done to all of us. I filled out a complaint form and submitted it to the HOA. 2 days later, Karen received her own violation notice. For the first time ever, Karen got fined. And oh, the irony was delicious. Karen never recovered from the humiliation. For the first time since she had moved in, she wasn't the one holding the clipboard, handing out notices, or patrolling the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff. Instead, she was on the receiving end of the very system she had spent so much time weaponizing. At first, she tried to fight back. She filed an appeal against her fine, citing some nonsense about special circumstances and misinterpretation of intent. The HOA denied it without hesitation. Then, she attempted to regain her influence by rallying the rule followers, but even they had started to distance themselves. Karen had gone too far, and everyone knew it. After a few months of cold stares, whispers behind her back, and complete loss of control, Karen did the only thing left in her arsenal. She put her house up for sale. The neighborhood waited patiently. Then, one glorious afternoon, the sight we had all been waiting for finally arrived. A moving truck parked in Karen's driveway. She was leaving. Word spread fast. By the time Karen loaded up the last of her things, neighbors had casually gathered outside, pretending to be busy with their lawns and driveways, but secretly watching the spectacle unfold. As she climbed into her car, Tom couldn't resist. "Hey Karen, don't forget to submit a move-out notice to the HOA. Wouldn't want to violate any rules on your way out." Karen didn't even look at him. She slammed her car door and sped off. The moment her vehicle disappeared down the street, someone, no one knows exactly who, started clapping. And just like that, the entire neighborhood erupted into applause. We were free. In the weeks that followed, the air felt lighter, the mood brighter. HOA meetings became normal again, without dramatic outbursts about mailbox sizes or unauthorized garden gnomes. And me? I finally got to enjoy my home without fear of clipboard tyranny. One evening, as I relaxed in my private backyard, *emphasis on private *, I took a deep breath and looked around. No uninvited guests, no bogus violation notices, no Karen. The grass was a little longer than usual. The mailbox was slightly out of alignment. And best of all, my gnome stood proudly by the front door, welcoming the world with his tiny ceramic grin. Life was good. What's the most ridiculous HOA rule or neighbor complaint you've ever heard or experienced in real life? If you caught someone trespassing and throwing a party in your backyard, how would you handle it? Who do you think was the biggest HOA villain? Karen or the people who actually followed her nonsense rules? If you enjoyed this HOA drama and love seeing justice served, don't forget to smash that like button. Speech balloon, drop a comment with your craziest HOA or nightmare neighbor story. I read them all. And if you want more wild stories, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Rocket! Thanks for watching HOA Havoc, where HOA nightmares turn into karma-filled entertainment. Smiling face with horns clapperboard.